Well, once again, I am joined by Chris Everett. She is the author of The Prescription for a Healthy Retirement. Chris, thank you so much for joining me once again and just sharing more thoughts on how to educate yourself and just be in a better position financially. This week, we'll be talking about the what ifs in life. This is chapter 7 of your book, and you kind of start off the chapter with the example of the Titanic. Obviously a horrible tragedy and very tragic, but back then the Titanic was kind of thought to be unsinkable. They didn't think that anything could go wrong, but that Titanic ship was not prepared for the unthinkable. There was not the preparation that needed to take place before they left. So can you explain maybe how to prepare for the future in regards to your finances? I know that you're not like a fortune teller and you don't know all the future and all of the what ifs, but what are some ways that someone could prepare for the what ifs in life?
Yeah, I think you really have to slow down, hopefully hire a fiduciary who's in your corner and can help you see the impact of all of your current decisions up to that point. Right? Because if you're in your 60s, 70s, and you've got a bunch of stuff, what's that bunch of stuff going to do for you, right? Mm-hmm. Well, let's take it piece by piece, plug it into our analysis, and see how long your money will last, number one, right? See what kind of pressure you could put on it, right? Like tax increases, or when Social Security says they're going to reduce your monthly benefit, what impact is that going to have on you? What happens if you do experience some long-term care event? What happens if the money that you have in the market went kaflooey? How do you really make adjustments for that? So when we pull everything together, like when the Titanic was pulling itself together to go on this long voyage, thinking that they were completely unsinkable, right? Because they had a certain subset of facts, but it wasn't everything that they needed, right? They needed the internet. They needed to know about, they needed to know about that iceberg. They needed to know, a lot of things, but they didn't. So just like that, when you bring your fact set to the table, it's incumbent upon me to show you what you don't see. Show how deep that iceberg is below the surface so that you can avoid it completely. It's incredibly important to do that. And I think too, until you go through the process, you don't really realize how revelatory it can be, because you know what you know, but you don't know what I know, or what some of the other experts that I work with know, that can really make your voyage much pleasant.
I love what you said about, you only know so much. And so that's why you need the people around you to speak wisdom into you and just come alongside you to encourage you in that way. That's something that maybe isn't always fun because you have to be transparent about your finances.
Fun.
I'm not saying you're not fun. The conversation might not be fun, but of course, working with people as great as you makes it the process maybe a little smoother than it would be, normally.
We try.
But what about maybe people that are trying to plan retirement around a pension or around Social Security that can add some extra challenges? So what mistakes do people make with that in mind, looking towards their future?
Sure. So probably some of the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to planning that segment of their plan is just not taking the time that they need to test their decision. So for example, if 95% of people turn on Social Security at the wrong time, then chances are very high it's going to cost them significant money. And it does. And so by stepping back and making sure they're selecting the correct, they're turning it on at the correct time, they're doing it in the correct way, especially if they have a spouse. If you turn on your Social Security, you pass away, what are you leaving for your spouse? Could it have been better if you just had enough information?
And is there kind of an ideal time to turn in that Social Security, or does it kind of vary person by person?
It always will vary person
Mm-hmm.
by person because I don't have one client that is the same. No one has the exact amount of savings, the exact um, value of their real estate or debt or what have you. Everyone's so different. So it really just depends. And not everyone's goals and desires are the same. I was just meeting just before we got on today, meeting with a new client, and they were saying that they really didn't make a lot of money. And so they never had this expectation that they would have wealth. And and they want to do a lot of things. So it's I said that's not true. Because if you live within your means and if you know what your means can do, and if we make sure we're plugging all the wealth leaks that exist in your model, it's like when you think about a bucket with holes in it. If you plug those holes, even if the um, contributions going in or the water in your bucket is just a trickle, if you've plugged the holes,
Mm.
it will fill up. So there's always hope. It just depends on how you look at it.
I love that illustration. That's a really smart way to look at things. And you mentioned that you were working with a new client. So maybe for somebody that's watching or listening right now, what can they expect from their first appointment with you?
So I love that. First of all, before we even have a full-on appointment, I think it's important to kind of meet somebody and get to know if you communicate well with each other, you like each other, you feel like you can trust each other. So we do what's called a pre-discover session. We have people take a communication profile.
Hmm.
So what that is, it's an online assessment tool that takes about 10 minutes. Hopefully you don't overthink the darn thing. It shows me how you process information, manage change, face risk, and problem solve.
Hmm.
And if you have a spouse or a significant other, we blend those profiles, and it really informs so much in the
Hmm.
relationship. Very helpful. So once we go through that, if we decide we're going to work together, then we send them more information to complete for us, data form and whatnot. But the process is, I think, very helpful. Number one, I want to discover in about an hour and a half as much as I possibly can about you. So we do a deep dive into whatever data you've given me, and I ask a ton of questions. Most of the people tell me that after we get through that session, I know more about what they think about things, and they have more questions about what they have than answers. And so it's really a digging in to see what's possible. So that's the first session, if you will, discover. And then after that time of spending an hour and a half of me really drilling down deep, I'll
Hmm.
know if you want to hire me or not. And then if it's a yes for both of us, because obviously I gotta like working with you too, right? Then I get all of their data in writing, so all of their documents, and then I just hunker down and go through everything.
Hmm.
We have what I call an understand session. This is where you can see everything factually, truthfully about what you have. This is where you'll begin to see, if what you've done is going to work or not. And now we now begin to explore various alternatives and test them. I will always say to people, make me prove the direction you think you want to go in, or I might suggest you go in. So
Hmm.
if I get hit by a bus, you know that this is really a good idea. After that, you've got full discovery of what you have or what you don't have. You completely understand the direction you might want to go in and why, right? Because this is your money.
Hmm.
And step 3 is to start making some choices and making some changes. This is your money, and you should decide with full understanding of what you're doing. And then
Hmm.
the last step is for us to just be there to help be your implementation partner.
Yeah.
For years to come.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so brilliant that you're approaching things that way of really trying to customize things as much as possible and even learn something as simple as how someone thinks and their thought process just to better them and better their financial situation. And all of those things, all of those tips and tricks can be found in your book. It's The Prescription for a Healthy Retirement by Chris Everett. It is an Amazon best-selling book. I would really recommend that all of you watching or listening right now go and pick up a copy and educate yourself on how to be in a better place financially. Thank you so much, Chris.
I agree. Thank you.